Hello, my name is Lee Presser. This is my show. I speak frequently to very interesting people. Some of these conversations are so exciting, so intellectually stimulating, I thought others might like to listen in. This is the reason we started recording Conversation with Lee Presser.
Welcome to Conversation with Lee Presser. My guest today is Gary Niebur, Mayor of Edwardsville, Illinois. Mr. Niebur, who was first elected mayor in April 1993, is the longest-serving mayor in Edwardsville in 200 years of history. Mayor Niebur has led Edwardsville through unprecedented change. Those who left Edwardsville in 1992 and returned today would barely recognize it. 12 years ago, Gary Niebur was the very first guest of this program. We thank him for helping us get off to a great start. Recently, Mr. Niebur announced he would not seek election to a sixth term. During this half hour, we're going to talk about his accomplishments and Edwardsville's progress during the past 2 decades. It's my great pleasure to have as my guest today, Mayor Gary Niebur.
Thank you, Lee. It's a pleasure to be here, and I do remember that 12 years ago that I had the opportunity to visit with you, and have always enjoyed doing that and done so many times over the years. And you're a good friend, and appreciate your interest not only in our community but the area as well.
I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot from you and watching you, how you have handled the affairs of Edwardsville. I realize that Edwardsville is a small community, and therefore it's easier for the mayor and the city council to maneuver and get things done than at the state level or the federal level. But nevertheless, it takes people who are actually willing to put the effort in.
Well, that's kind of you, and I've been very fortunate over the years to work with some marvelous people, elected officials, department heads, administrators, and really the list goes on, and most importantly, a community full of people that have always embraced the community. They want this to be the best community it can be, and they're willing to donate their time and their talents and their energy, and in many, many cases, their resources. So, Edwardsville, I grew up in Edwardsville, lived here all my life. I really have no interest in comparing it to another community, but I feel very fortunate. I have been able to be of public service. I've done the best I can. This is a marvelous community. We, even through the growth, we still, I think, recognize the importance of retaining the charm and character of the community that we had many years ago.
You started out in the Parks Department many, many years ago, didn't you?
I actually did. As a matter of fact, my first part-time job during summer vacations off of school was in the Parks Department, cutting grass and maintaining the parks. And from that point, for a couple of years, I was actually director of Parks and Recreation. And then the opportunity at the YMCA came available back in '82. So
I didn't even mention that part about you actually have a business life too, don't you? You're the CEO and executive director.
Right.
What are all your titles there?
CEO president is the official title, but the YMCA is a big part of this community. I remember starting back there in 1982 when the Y certainly began a transformation, transition to, I believe, an organization, an association that really has provided a great deal for the people of this community over the years. I remember starting there, Lee, and if I recall correctly, I know from a standpoint of the budget back in 1982 was about $170,000.
This is that little building in Essex.
It was at the time, it was the small building in Essex. We had maybe 1,500 members, and as we kind of move forward, 30 years later, we have 21,000 members. We've grown from a relatively small building to two major facilities in the community that are there, quite frankly, because of the support of the community, and a budget over $6 million. So I've been fortunate in a lot of ways. I've been fortunate in having good full-time employment with the Y. Has been been fabulous to me. They did support or allow me to run for mayor 20 years ago.
Well, first,
this month.
two terms as an alderman.
Actually, that's true. I was first elected to the city council and served 2 terms, as you said, and then followed that up with 20 years of mayor. As I mentioned earlier, that you think back, the first time I was sworn into office as an alderman, Debbie and I brought our daughter Ashley with us to that, and Debbie carried her in a pumpkin seat 28 years ago, 3 months old at the time. So my kids have really been a big part of me being involved in city government.
Mm-hmm. And when you first started, Edwardsville was a 2-lane community. All the 157, 159 were both just 2-lane, kind of bad shoulder kind of roads, right?
Exactly. When I think back what were things like, 20 years ago, even this month, and certainly before when I was an alderman, and some of the big issues, major issues, and very important issues were highways, with Edwardsville being basically having 3 state highways going through the community, 157, 159, 143. I remember the days, and I think you probably would too, of driving down Troy Road and being in a traffic jam virtually all the time. Mm-hmm. That was that was one of the biggest challenges, and that was, how do we get the state to fulfill its responsibility to the people of Edwardsville and in the region to invest in highway upgrades. Persistence finally paid off, and if you look at our network of highways today, over the past basically 10 years, you've seen 157 to 4-lane, 159, the Governor's Parkway project that was actually announced in the early 70s.
George Ryan, though.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Governor Ryan, he put a lot of money into the southwestern Illinois.
No question. There's no question he did. But then you look at 159 and you look at the new 159, and over a period of about 5 years, we obtained about $50 million in highway improvement funds from IDOT. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that, quite frankly, was certainly, the need was pretty evident, but a great deal of persistence.
But you guys generate a lot of tax money now, don't you, since the building of these roads? Why don't you talk about what has happened in Edwardsville since the infrastructure was improved?
Well, there was a great deal that began even before the infrastructure was improved, which obviously helped in terms of getting the funding for this. But if you look back, Edwardsville today produces, our 1% sales tax produces about $4 million a year. When I started, I believe our sales tax was somewhere in the $800,000 a year range. So the rooftops obviously lead to retail growth. The rooftops came, retail growth came. I remember the opening of the Steak and Shake. Mm-hmm. It's been many, many years ago. But the development came for, I think, several reasons. Number one was the growth in the community, the residential growth in not only Edwardsville, but the surrounding area, and then coupled with, obviously, access. And we project that about 35 to 40% of our sales tax that we generate and allow us to run city government actually comes from people outside the city limits. Mm-hmm. So
those Glen Carbon people come.
Well, and vice versa. Yes. And vice versa. But
there was a time when there was considerable distance between Edwardsville and Glen
absolutely.
Carbon. I mean, there was a lot of unincorporated in between there, wasn't there?
No question.
Now you couldn't even tell.
Well, and if you look at basically the area from Coles going south, all of that is basically filled in, over the past probably 15, 20 years. So, and certainly it's coupled with having good quality retailers, but we have become a community that has good access to retail product. That wasn't the case 15 years ago. People were more apt to be able to have to go out of the community, whether it's Fairview or even in Missouri. And today, one of the priorities we had very early on, Lee, and I think you and I talked about this, was we needed to build a retail base. We needed to build a commercial, professional base. We even needed to do something like the distribution base, center base, to diversify our taxes. The burden of property taxes, of running the city, from police and fire, and the list goes on, was basically a burden that years ago was only shouldered by homeowners. We have been successful in that regard. So,
and one of the good things that I saw that you did with all this generated tax money is that it wasn't all spent in the new areas.
Exactly.
You actually took some of that money and went back into the older areas of Edwardsville and put in new sidewalks, repaved the roads, made sure that that part of Edwardsville kept up with the newer parts.
Absolutely.
Of
Absolutely. That is near and dear to me. When I first ran for mayor, I put together, at the time it was called a white paper, and it listed 10 or 15 subjects and topics that I really felt like we needed to address. Highways was one of them, as we mentioned earlier. Another one that was very high on the list was investing in what I called our older established neighborhoods, including downtown. If you think back, downtown was pretty rugged 20, 25 years ago. Businesses leaving, vacant buildings. You probably remember the building at Main and Vandalia.
Schwartz building?
You name it. Exactly. I mean, there's just, our downtown was in poor condition.
As so many in Madison
Exactly.
and St. Clair County had
You know,
become.
we were fortunate, and we had, and still have, thank goodness, the base of the county government. But if you think back, our downtown was frankly dilapidated. It needed to be rejuvenated. And the only way that we were going to be able to do that was, in my view, and I said this, I remember in that report, I said that if we are not willing, meaning city government, meaning the public sector, if we're not willing to invest in downtown and invest in our older established neighborhoods, why in the world would we expect the private sector to come in? So we put together a very comprehensive plan. It dealt not only with just downtown, it dealt with some of our older parts of our community. And as we witnessed growth, new growth, there was somewhat of a fear that I had. And that fear is that we would end up as two communities. We would end up as one that was more defined as the kind of the old area of town that is
less desirable.
And then, quote, the brand new on the outskirts. And I think of all the things that we, and I say this very sincerely, we accomplished over the years. It was a partnership of our residents, certainly our city leaders, the community as a whole tackled these issues.
I remember there was discussions when you were wanting to do the downtown renovation. I forget exactly what the title of it was, but there were all kinds of discussions to bring everybody in before you move forward so that people were fully invested in this is the direction you wanted to go.
I remember a meeting that was held at the library where we actually brought in property owners, other community leaders, business leaders in the downtown area, and we before we developed the plan, which I thought was a key to that, quite frankly, before we put together a plan and handed it to them, we needed them to be a part of the plan. We needed their input, and quite frankly, for some selfish reasons, in order for this plan to work, we had to have buy-in.
Right.
And we did. And if you look at, I've got some pictures that I'll share with you someday about the look of our downtown. And
there was still wires
overhead,
right? And the old street lamps. And
you had poles, one was leaning this way, one that way. I remember on a Friday evening after work, this is when I was an alderman, I went up to Tom Eager's barbershop. You knew Tom very well. And Tom was the kind of guy, every morning when he went to his shop, He swept the sidewalk, he cleaned out front of his shop every morning. But if you looked 100 feet away, there were weeds in the sidewalk that were 6 inches tall.
And this is near the courthouse.
Exactly. So I remember going down there, and the game plan was Tom will bring his weed whip, I remember a brand new weed whip. I brought my blower, and we literally went up and down Main Street. He cut the weeds, I blowed the weeds away. That's where that really kind of all began. And if you look at our downtown today, it's vibrant, it's strong. You could literally probably,
right?
it generates significant revenue for the city. You would go downtown years ago, and after 5:30,
it was closed up.
It was shut down.
Right.
You go downtown today, tonight, over the weekend, you're going to see on Saturdays during season the Goshen Market. You're going to see all kinds of functions and events. You're going to see the SIU Welcome Back Party. You're going to see the Wildie. You're going to see businesses that are vibrant and they're alive. And you look at towns of our population, and I'm not sure you'll find as many that have such an active and vibrant downtown. So that was a high priority, and it wasn't my priority. It was, I believe, embraced as a community priority, and that's why I think we had some success.
Edwardsville's population now is approximately what?
25,000. Right at 25,000. Yeah.
And so you're, what do they call it? Self-governing? I forget the...
Home rule?
Home rule.
Yeah, it was interesting. Once a city is certified as 25,000 population or over, they become home rule. It gives them a little more authority other than what the statute for municipalities allow. And we did a special census 4 or 5 years ago. And the special census came in at 25,100.
I remember you sort of squeaked in there.
We squeaked in. We were certified as home rule. The last census that was done, just a little over a year and a half ago, believe it or not, the population came in at 24,900 or something.
Ooh.
Therefore, we had to have a referendum, and it was on the ballot recently, as to whether the citizens wanted to, quote, retain the home rule status. And that passed by about 76%. That was a big message. We felt it was a positive message for the community. Confidence. Right. Okay. So, and the only reason we actually dropped below 25,000 which was admitted later, is that the census failed to count one of the residence halls at SIU. But in order to have them start over again, it would have cost us a lot of money. So we put it on the ballot, and the people spoke.
So you decided that enough's enough. 28 years, 20 years as mayor. That's and before we went on the air, you said that this was something that you and your wife you just talked about privately.
Yeah, I've been thinking long and hard about it for probably over a year, and
I think most people only see the glamour. They don't understand the wear and tear and the work.
Well, I think
goes
there's
into
and also people, rightfully so, they just want the job done. It's a part-time job, which is fine, but my personal approach to the job was, it's a full-time responsibility.
I was going to say, you've always been a full-time mayor, whether you get paid for it or not.
Right, and so it just really came that I just felt it was time. It was time, to dedicate myself to maybe some other priorities that I have, and just to step aside. So I made the decision really this past summer and waited to announce it until late October.
Well, you were really young when you got started, and you're still fairly young now, even after 28 years of service.
A lot of change. The hair, no, but
yeah, well,
But it has. I've looked at it, and I've looked at it as being an honor to serve the community in that way. I've also been fortunately, and that is that Edwardsville's challenges over the years have been challenges related to growth. And if you think about it, and you don't have to look real far, if you think about it, other communities' challenges, they're different. Their challenges may be they don't have investment in the community.
Right.
They have people that even grew up in a community and they can't wait to leave. They don't have businesses that are interested in investing in the community because they are not confident about the return on their investment. So if you look at Edwardsville, we've been fortunate in that regard. Just as a business, a business doesn't like to have a quote parking problem, that they don't have enough parking spots.
Mm-hmm.
Well, think about the business that has plenty of parking spots, but nobody ever parks in them.
Right.
So a lot of our challenges, infrastructure, the highways, the water and sewer systems, the list kind of goes on, were challenges because people wanted to be a part of Edwardsville. Businesses wanted to come to Edwardsville. We took a lot of some grief over the years by developing pretty high standards in terms of development.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the days when
the contractors wanted you to just let them in. We'll just build these houses.
Well, I remember, those days. Now, obviously, residential growth is flattened off considerably. But I remember when that growth was 150 new houses a year for a 10-year period. And it kind of seemed at one point in there that everybody that had a pickup truck and a hammer was all of a sudden a quality premium home builder.
Mm-hmm.
So we did take a step that was a big step, and that was we felt that this community and the importance of the future of the community deserved high standards in terms of development. I remember growing up with the home builders, and there have been some great ones, and there still are, okay? But we just felt like we needed to talk about standards of development, whether it's commercial, professional, and those were some tough times because a lot of people said just, let people just do what they want.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that may be okay for the first year or two, but what happens 5 years from now or 10 years from now?
When those houses start falling apart?
Yeah. And the businesses don't succeed for whatever reason. So the bottom line is that it's been a wide range of things, but I've been very blessed. I've been very fortunate. This community has supported me. I ran, 5 times for mayor.
Well, so you also spent some time on water. Talk a little bit about water.
That was really back more in the days when I served on the city council. When I remember people coming to a meeting, a public meeting, with laundry baskets full of dirty clothes. That was back in the days, again, when I was serving as an alderman, that the city wasn't keeping up with the demands of the infrastructure consistent with what was needed for the growth.
Just so people understand, you have your own water source,
Absolutely.
right? Yeah, you're not coming out of the Mississippi. You've got
we have our
some
own water
aquifers.
treatment. Exactly.
Right. We got about 5 minutes left here, by the way.
So, that was one of those that was kind of a tough time for everybody in city government. But again, the problem was tackled, and we have a very good infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. But I remember even long before that, even when they first talked about building, what is it, the Northwest something water district that went out to SIU, which was fairly new at that time.
Absolutely. And that's the thing that we've been able to do and do in a fiscally responsible way, was to extend that infrastructure, whether it be out to the new Hortica building or whether it be down to the warehouses in the American Bottoms area.
You're talking about 111 and 270.
Right. Is to be able to keep up with that and do it in a way that wasn't 100% burden to the homeowner.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, it led to increase in tap-on fees to help fund that. So there are great memories there. I think that investing in our older neighborhoods, we talked about downtown, but you and I took a drive years ago. I'm really proud of if you look at North Main Street. North Main Street is old Edwardsville. It is Edwardsville.
Mm-hmm. Union, East
all
and
of
West
that
Union.
whole area. If you drive through there and you see the improvements that have been made and a massive improvement that's being made on North Main, the entrance to the city, we needed to commit to that. We needed to do that, and we're doing that. That coupled with, I think, a good solid plan, but coupled more importantly with good people. Hundreds of volunteers. Many, many people that have stepped up to the plate and said, I'll serve.
Edwardsville has never lacked for volunteers.
No.
And you still have your own municipal band, too, don't you?
Exactly. That's charm and character. Think about that. How many towns, have a municipal band? Thursday nights, people can walk to the park. They can take their kids. It doesn't cost them anything. The charm and character of a community is really important, and we've really committed to, even with the growth, that we wanted to retain that charm and character of the small town, where you can walk down Main Street and you can stop and get lunch, or you can come back that evening and now
Or sit out, and actually at some of these lunch places be able to sit out
on the
sidewalk.
And you can then go to the Wildey for a movie or a show, and afterwards you can go out. I think Edwardsville's a well-rounded community. When Family Circle magazine, one of the largest publications in the country, named Edwardsville as one of the top 10 places to raise a family. That was, 3 years ago now.
Remember, we had you here right when that happened. And
that was special. But I think, as I leave office in 4 months, I'm grateful. I'm thankful that people have given me the opportunity to do what I've worked hard to do. I said when I went into office that the one thing people can rest assured of is I'll give it my best. I'll do my best. I've done that. Sometimes that has met with success, and maybe it hasn't met with success on as many fronts as I would have liked, but I really have no regrets. I'm proud of this community. I'm proud of the people of this community, most importantly, and I feel good about the role that I played.
I have to say, and we're running out of time here, I just want to say that I didn't grow up in Edwardsville. I'd lived in Edwardsville for a while. My observations is that that you and your team have worked a miracle compared to some of the other communities in Madison and St. Clair counties. You're to be congratulated. You're also to be told you enjoy your time off and have a good rest. And we may even have you back here another time just for an overview of how things are going from your view.
I'd love to do it, and I appreciate your support not only of Edwardsville but the region. And it's been a pleasure not only knowing you but visiting with you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And to my audience, I've been speaking to Mayor Gary Niebur. He's the mayor of Edwardsville, Illinois. He's done an excellent job. He's leaving after 20 years of service. He's to be congratulated. Thank you all. We'll see you next time. And this show is also available on YouTube. Thanks.